I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side, because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal now.
Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't.
Few media figures have felt the sting of Bill Maher's sharp tongue quite like CNN's Jake Tapper. Their recent dust-up wasn't just a disagreement, it was a full-scale ideological showdown that rippled through the world of cable news. As ties here, Maher took aim. The fallout left some progressive voices scrambling to respond. We've got all the details on this headline-making clash, so strap in. It's going to be a wild ride.
Early on, you say that Trump, quote, got the White House again, but he isn't going to get your mind. There are probably a lot of viewers that want to hear what you mean by that and how you want to achieve that.
So I'm not going to chase every rabbit down the hole like I did the first term. You know, that's what I mean about he's not going to get my mind.
Jake Tapper tried to set the stage for a classic Bill Maher-Trump takedown. Toss out the topic, sit back, and wait for the fireworks. But this time, Maher didn't take the bait. Cool and calculated, he sidestepped the prompt entirely, signaling that he wasn't interested in rehashing the same anti-Trump script from years past. No fiery rant, no mic drop, just a quiet pivot that left Tapper visibly off balance. So what's changed? Has Maher softened on Trump? It's hard to say for certain, but the shift was undeniable. The Maher of old, who made a career out of skewering, Trump, with surgical precision, would have jumped at the opportunity. This version? He seemed more interested in breaking the pattern than feeding the outrage machine.
I'm just not going to pre-hate anything. I'm just going to hope for the best, and then when something serious happens, I'll comment on that. Otherwise, I have new rules and monologue as a place in the show every week to talk about invading Greenland and annexing Canada and other stuff that's perfect for comedy, but I'm not going to take it seriously.
You could see it all over Jake Tapper's face. Confusion, frustration, maybe even a flicker of panic. This wasn't the Bill Maher he thought he was booking. Tapper clearly expected the familiar version, the quick-witted, unapologetically liberal comedian known for slicing Trump to pieces with razor-sharp precision. Instead, he got a different Maher, disillusioned, fed up, and done playing partisan games. Maher didn't show up to toe the Democratic line.
Writing an election book, and one of the things I just stumbled on was a monologue you gave in October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying, the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke. But they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Yeah, and I felt I had standing to make that case because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism.
Before we go any further, there's an observation I have to share, and it's a telling one. More and more prominent voices on the left seem to be scrambling to cash in on what they're now calling Biden's political implosion. That's right. Suddenly, everyone and their publisher is rushing to release a book dissecting the Democrats' November meltdown. And guess what the recurring theme is? Biden's age and declining mental acuity, the same concerns they once mocked, dismissed, and labeled as right-wing conspiracy theories are now their golden ticket to bestseller status. Funny how that works, isn't it? When people like us raised legitimate questions about Biden's mental fitness, we were ridiculed, silenced, or branded with every label in the book. Racist, extremist, conspiracy theorist, take your pick. But now, with the political tide turning, And the election results impossible to ignore. It's suddenly open season on Biden. The hypocrisy is staggering. The opportunism, even worse. These voices aren't sounding the alarm to save the Democratic Party. They're just trying to save their own careers, one convenient hot take at a time.
I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side, because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal.
I genuinely believe that if more media outlets adopted Bill Maher's approach, speaking the truth without playing for a team, America would be in a far better place. Maher may lean liberal, but he's one of the rare voices willing to call out nonsense wherever it comes from. That's what journalism should be: honesty over ideology, facts over feelings. Unfortunately, too many media organizations today act more like extensions of political parties, shaping their coverage to appease their base rather than to inform the public.
This was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly. And he did. And, you know, I don't think history is going to treat Joe Biden kindly for doing that.
Jake Tapper did his best to run interference for Joe Biden, leaning on the familiar refrain: age is just a number. He argued that Biden wasn't too old to run for re-election, pointing to other seasoned politicians who remain active and effective well into their later years. But Bill Maher wasn't buying it. With his trademark precision, Maher pushed back, hard. He made it clear that he doesn't assess age with a broad brush. For him, it's case by case. And in Biden's case, the signs are simply too glaring to ignore. According to Maher, this isn't about the number on Biden's birth certificate. It's about the observable symptoms. The awkward stumbles, the verbal missteps, the moments of visible mental fog. Maher doesn't see them as harmless quirks. He sees them as red flags. Whether Biden were 60 or 80, Maher argued, the concern isn't age, it's capability. And right now, Biden's not displaying the sharpness, clarity, or stamina that the presidency demands. As Maher put it, the Oval Office isn't a retirement hobby. It's a job that requires peak performance. Still hoping to steer the conversation. Back to safer ground, Tapper tossed out another prompt, trying once more to get Maher to play along. What happened next? Let's just say it didn't go according to plan.
Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't, but it's possible. And look, anything's possible with this guy. I'll put it this way. When George Bush was in the White House, it never even entered my mind. Never entered my mind that I couldn't say whatever I wanted to say without repercussions. And that's one of the great things about living in America. And we take America for granted and that kind of stuff, and maybe we can't anymore. So we'll see. But am I going to let it affect what I do? No. I mean, the day I feel like I can't say what I want without going to Guantanamo Bay.
At this point, I actually started to feel a little embarrassed for Jake Tapper. Every baited hook he tossed into the conversation came up empty, not a single bite. Maher wasn't just sidestepping the traps. He was gliding around them with the kind of finesse and verbal precision that only he can pull off.
I do want to ask you before you go, and congratulations again on the special, but there's talk promulgated by you about maybe you quitting the HBO show, about maybe not touring anymore. Well, you said something to Jane Fonda about thinking about that. Where are you in your career? You still got a lot of good stand-up, a lot of good jokes in you, right? Like, tell us what's next.
Okay. I am stopping doing stand-up just because I'm tired of touring, just because I've been doing it for 40 years. I love it. Look, I love nothing more than being on stage somewhere telling jokes to strangers. It's been my entire life. It's been the most consistent thing in my life. But for those people who say to me, why don't you just do it a little bit? You can't do it a little bit. Stand-up is like being a boxer. You have to be in training. You can't just walk up there and do it. So I've been in training for 40 years. I need a break. And I'm tired of the travel. I'm tired of dragging my ass out of bed on Saturday morning to go to some place after I worked so hard on Real Time all week. Maybe I'll go back to it. But, you know, I have a podcast.